What's going on, guys? Kalipis Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be going over what kind of value you'll get for your money when you buy the Motorola Moto G Stylus 5G. Before we go any further, I do want to remind you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It helps out the channel a lot. That being said, let's get into the video. So this phone has a 6.8-inch IPS LCD display with a resolution of 1080p, a PPI of 386, an aspect ratio of 20:9, and a screen-to-body ratio of 85%. We got a 16 megapixel front-facing camera right here, and it's got a hole punch design that I think looks really nice. I do have the brightness at 100% right now, and overall, I would say it looks really good. This phone not only has a really large display that's going to be perfect for content consumption, stuff like streaming videos, viewing photos, playing games, even reading, and that sort of thing, but it's also not too bulky, so you get the benefits of having a large display without having the drawbacks of a really big phone. It's still perfectly comfortable to hold in your hand and carry in your pocket with no issue. This phone has 256 gigabytes of internal storage with micro SD card expansion. Now keep in mind, if you're getting this through a carrier, it might be a little different. The specific variant of the phone that we're going over in this video is the unlocked variant you can get through Motorola. That being said, 256 gigabytes is a ton of storage. That's a quarter terabyte all in a mid-range phone. You typically don't see that much storage in this type of phone. That's more gonna be something reserved for flagship phones like the Samsung Galaxy S21 Ultra, maybe the iPhone 12 Pro Max, or a high-end OnePlus phone, something like that. You might see that, but not in a mid-range phone like this. Typically with these phones, it caps out at 128 gigabytes, but with this device, you get 256, which is really impressive. So if you're more of a power user and you have lots of apps, photos and videos, data, all that kind of thing, having this much storage is going to be a great asset for you. And even if you're not a power user, if you're just an average user who doesn't do a whole lot with your phone, apps, the system, all kinds of data, it's all getting larger and larger as time goes on. So having more storage than you think you need, and in this case, probably a lot more storage, is going to be a good thing regardless of your uses. Now this phone does not have wireless charging, which isn't too surprising because it is a mid-range phone, and very few phones that aren't flagship phones have that feature. I'm hoping to see it in future phones, but it's really not quite there yet. That being said, the phone does have not only face unlock, but also a fingerprint scanner. Having both options, while pretty expected for a mid-range phone, is always really nice. And this fingerprint scanner works really well too. It's right back here in this little spot here. Let's go ahead and give it a try. There we go, one more time. And there we go. As you can see, it's really fast and responsive. No problems there. For the camera setup, we got a 48 megapixel rear camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 5 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. Real good stuff. This phone pretty much has every feature you could ask for in a phone of this level, and it takes really good pictures as well. For video, this phone can shoot in 1080p in both the rear and the front facing cameras. Now that's actually a little bit of a disappointment because the 4G counterpart to this phone that was released earlier this year actually can shoot in 4K. Now I'm not sure why they took that feature off for the 5G version of this phone. And if you are really into shooting videos, this could be a drawback, and it's a situation that really doesn't make a lot of sense to me. This phone has double the storage of its 4G counterpart, and 4K files are really big, so you would think that they would give the 4K capability to the one with more storage if they were going to give it to either of them, but unfortunately that just didn't happen. So if you are looking for a phone that can shoot 4K videos, then this is probably not going to be the device for you, and you might want to check out the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2021 instead. Internally, this phone is getting 6 gigabytes of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 480 5G processor. Now again with the RAM, same thing as the storage, depending on the carrier you're getting this phone through. If you're not getting it directly from Motorola, this might be a little bit different. In my experience, I have seen carriers cut the storage and the RAM of phones instead of having the same exact spec as you get through the factory. So keep that in mind. This is the unlocked variant that you get directly through Motorola. That being said, I did run a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on this phone, and it came back with a single core score of 494 and a multi-core score of 1336. So it's not bad, but I'm not really that impressed either, because I've seen plenty of phones, even 4G phones, that have a little bit more processing power than this one. Especially in this price range, this is not really that remarkable, and 5G phones typically have a little bit more power than 4G phones, and in this case, I can't remember the exact specification of the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2021 off the top of my head, but I don't think that this one is much stronger, if it's even stronger at all. I will go ahead and put this information in the comments in case you're interested. But that being said, my takeaway on this phone's processing power is it's gonna be able to do pretty much anything you'd reasonably expect. Maybe if you're running a really high-end game like Fortnite or something, it might not work out too well, because those games take up a ton of RAM. Although this phone does have 6 gigabytes, so it's not too bad. I would try it out if you really want to. Maybe it might work fine, but I wouldn't be surprised if it ran a little slow. That and video editing with larger files, that's probably gonna be a little bit tough on a device like this with this level of processing power. But for your daily activities, you're gonna be perfectly fine. Browsing the web, playing some games, doing that sort of thing. I haven't noticed any performance issues with the phone, but at the same time, I wouldn't expect flagship level or high-end performance from it, because this really isn't that powerful in relation to lots of other phones. If you're a little bit more concerned about processing power, I would suggest you run a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on your current device and compare it to this one and see if it would be an upgrade. For the battery of this phone, we're getting a 5000 milliamp hour battery that supports 10 watt fast charging. So that's really good. This battery is really large, meaning it's gonna have tons of life throughout the day, as well as longevity down the road. So if you like to get one phone and keep it for a longer period of time, this is gonna be a real good benefit for you, because when you have a larger battery, you don't notice it degrading as quickly as you would with a phone that has a smaller battery. So as a result, you won't have to replace the phone nearly as soon as you would with a different device. This phone also has a decent amount of features like gestures and all that kind of thing that you can change in the settings. If you are interested in seeing that info, definitely check out my beginner's guide and my tips and tricks video for this phone, where I'll be going over all of that in more depth. But just know that this phone does have a really decent amount of features, and it also has a water repellent design, so it's a little bit more resistant to water than your average mid-level phone. That being said, one feature it doesn't have that I really wish it did is NFC. NFC is the technology used for contactless mobile payment services like Google Pay and all that. And I don't know why this phone doesn't have it, because it is a 5G phone, definitely in the mid-range. And lots of mid-range phones these days are starting to get NFC. So I would think that a 5G Motorola phone released this late in 2021 would have NFC. But unfortunately, this phone doesn't. So if that type of feature is one you use often, then this is probably not gonna be the device for you. So in conclusion, when you spend $399 on the Motorola Moto G Stylus 5G, what kind of value are you getting out of it? I would say you're really getting a lot. You got a great display for content consumption that not only is really large, but it also has a good resolution and looks good in general. So if you're doing stuff like streaming videos, reading, viewing photos, playing games, all that kind of thing is gonna be really good on this phone. And although it is on the larger side, it's thin enough to not be so bulky in your pocket or when you're holding it in your hand, so you're not gonna really notice the downsides of having a larger display because of this. Overall, the phone has a nice modern look that I'm a big fan of. It has great camera features, pretty much every different one you could ask for. It also has a ton of storage for apps, photos, and videos, pretty much anything you would need. And it has a huge battery and a nice amount of features to top it all off. The only things that I wish this phone had that it doesn't is a little bit better of a processor. I do think you can do better if processing power is your top priority. I wish it could shoot 4K videos in the rear camera because the 4G counterpart of this phone was able to. I don't know why they took that feature away. And finally, I wish this phone had NFC. Other than that, I think it's a great phone that provides a good amount of value in 2021. But I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel, and I will see you in the next one.